Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, Ani. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land where we are today is the traditional territory of Garden River First Nation, as well as the Métis First Nation and Batchewana First Nation. Chi Miigwech for sharing your land with us today. It's an honor to be here as well. I love being here at Algoma Steel. It's such an amazing place to be with my good friend who I have the pleasure to announce. Ladies and gentlemen, I've stood here before in 2018 when Donald Trump had put tariffs on steel then. We all stood together, shoulder to shoulder, and we fought, we protected, and we got through it. But this time, this has been unprecedented, what we have seen from the American administration. So I am so glad to have Mark Carney as our Prime Minister here today. And I think this is a testament to how Sault Ste. Marie and the Algoma District has stood strong, Canada strong. It is so important to the people that Prime Minister Mark Carney is here. We're standing with you, sir. It is absolutely amazing what you have done in shepherding us through to this point in time. You know, we just have America across the river, and I know for a fact that this is ground zero in this battle against these unjust and unfair tariffs, threats to our economic sovereignty. You know, this is absolutely unprecedented, so I am so glad that you are here today, Prime Minister Mark Carney, with Diana, your wife, with you as well. It's amazing our spouses are so important to us as we campaign in this absolutely critical election. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to let you know that right after the Prime Minister was chosen by the Liberal Party, I wrote a letter to the then Prime Minister days after, pointing out that your ideas of building big, building like we've never built before, you know, and pointing out that Algoma Steel right here makes plate steel, military-grade plate steel that can be used in armored vehicles and in ships. And I wanted to, you know, express that in that letter. And I'm so glad, Mr. Prime Minister, that you have throughout the country pointed out that as you build big, that you will use Canadian steel, aluminum, and wood in this major, major building project. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please put your hands together and welcome Mark Carney, who is standing here with these workers that he is going to protect. We will be there for you through and through. We're going to win this trade battle with this man. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands together.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Terry, for that kind introduction. Thank you for the letter. Et merci à tous nos exceptionnels candidats libéraux à travers Ontario. Above all, I want to thank Mike Garcia, Kate, and Algoma Steel for hosting me and us this morning. And I'm going to talk a lot about steel. I'm going to talk a lot about building and a lot about the future. But before I begin, I just want to take a moment to offer my deepest condolences to the family of Connor Dunn, a promising local hockey player and, by all accounts, incredible young man who was tragically killed on the weekend. I know how tight-knit communities such as the Sioux are, and how you live and breathe the game in a young individual like that, and so our thoughts and prayers are very much with you at this time. As Terry just emphasized, Algoma builds what Canada needs right now, what Canada needs for the future: steel. We need steel to build our rails and our transportation lines, to build out our energy infrastructure. We need steel to build our autos, steel to build our ships. We need high quality, Canadian-made steel to build greater prosperity. And how you build it, how you build that steel also is what Canada needs right now. With ambition, with innovation, a willingness to work hard and work smart. You know, we are literally weeks away from the first test run of the electric arc furnace line, which is going to take 70% of the carbon out, a huge investment that's been made alongside the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario. This is how we build Canada strong. Now, we know, and Terry just mentioned it, people at Algoma, the people of the Sioux, people across Canada, we're living through the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. And just yesterday, President Trump repeated his attacks on Canada. And I'll paraphrase. He said Canada should not play any part in the American auto industry when we play a central part in the American auto industry. He has put, for the second time, illegal and unjustified tariffs on aluminum and on steel. So he's threatening Canadian workers in auto manufacturing and workers throughout the industry's supply chain, including here at Algoma. So let me be equally clear. This is Canada. We decide what we do here. The President's latest comments are more proof, as if we needed any, that the old relationship with the United States that we've had is over. And it's proof, and it's a reminder, it's a call to action that we need to chart a new path. That's the new reality. Le président Trump menace le Canada, l'allié et partenaire le plus fiable des États-Unis. Il menace nos entreprises. Il menace nos travailleurs. Il menace les économies de nos retraités. President Trump, his words and actions, he wants to divide us because dividing us would make his job easier. He's trying to break us so that America can own us. And that will never happen. We will stand with the auto workers, with the forestry workers, the aluminum workers, and above all, the steel workers. We will stand with every single Canadian worker targeted by President Trump's attacks on our country. We will stand with you. And crucially, we will fight, protect, and build. We have implemented our own counter tariffs, which will cause maximum damage in the U.S. and have only minimal impact here. On steel and aluminum, our tariffs match fully the scale of the U.S. assault. And we are returning all of the proceeds, every dollar, from those tariffs to protect our workers and the businesses that are most affected by this trade war. Anticipating this crisis and the severity of the crisis from day one, my government has helped Canadian businesses weather the storm. We're providing companies with the option of up to $40 billion in liquidity or direct financing, including by deferring tax payments. This will allow those companies to take longer-term decisions without undue pressures from short-term trade actions. A few weeks ago, in Windsor, we pledged to create a $2 billion strategic response fund that will fortify the entire Canadian auto supply chain, from finished vehicles to steel. We launched a Made in Canada strategy to address a Made in America problem. We're developing new markets with reliable partners. We have never taken our eye off the ball. We're also using all levers available, everything that's available to the government to support our steel industry. We will maximize Canadian steel, aluminum, and other critical minerals from exploration through to battery production. We'll maximize the use of those materials to seize this economic opportunity, to create higher paying jobs, and ultimately to build the strongest economy in the G7. We will now deploy a made-in-Canada procurement strategy that will prioritize Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, and Canadian critical minerals. We will create Buy Canadian standards for federal infrastructure funding and for national defense projects to maximize our use of Canadian steel. This, as we boost Canadian domestic defense industries, and I stress domestic defense industries in production, as we build security relationships with our most reliable partners, including in Europe. Ça inclut la participation du Canada au plan Réarme Europe pour appuyer la sécurité transatlantique tout en générant des investissements ici au Canada. Nous allons utiliser tous les outils à notre disposition en tirant profit des avancées technologiques et haute innovation pour bâtir des maisons à un rythme qui n'a pas été vu depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. In our strategy to double home building, we'll invest in our homegrown building industry, supporting workers and businesses and driving the adoption of Canadian mass timber, modular, prefabricated technologies. This too will benefit our key industries, including steel. We will unite our country and invest in nation-building infrastructure on a scale not seen in generations. This means major nation-building projects, ports, rails, bridges, tunnels, and much more. Projects that will connect Canada and grow our economy in ways that last for generations. Again, benefiting key industries, including steel. And in this process, we will safeguard our economy and our values. Nous travaillons en partenariat avec les provinces, les territoires et les communautés autochtones pour accélérer la réalisation de projets majeurs. Nous allons bâtir ces projets d'intérêt national à une vitesse sans précédent, en utilisant l'acier et l'aluminium d'ici, les minéraux critiques d'ici, les travailleurs d'ici et les entreprises d'ici. Nous allons doubler le nombre de logements que nous construisons par année en nous appuyant sur l'expertise de nos travailleurs et entreprises et en utilisant le bois canadien. Nous allons bâtir une seule économie canadienne, pas 13. Bâtir une économie canadienne forte. Bâtir un Canada fort. Nous allons mettre en position de force, une position de force, pour négocier et renégocier des attentes commerciales. We can control our economic destiny with the right plan. A plan that uses overwhelming force to overcome the anxieties that people naturally feel, to break through the fog of uncertainty that businesses face, and above all, to replace what the crisis is taking away. As the private sector retreats, government needs to step up to provide direction, to catalyze action and investment. And that's what our plan to build Canada strong will do. Pierre Poilievre has no plan to stand up to President Trump. He's literally grasping at straws as Canada faces the gravest crisis of our lifetimes. He's pledging to end childcare, dental care, farmer care, the CBC. He's ignoring the investments we need to build the strongest economy that works for everyone. He's offering Canadians instead a fantasy of fiscal tricks and phantom growth. In contrast, we will catalyze up to $500 billion in investment and create a total of up to $20,000 in economic value for every Canadian over the next 5 years. Because, unlike Pierre Poilievre, I've managed budgets before. I've managed economies before. I've managed crises before. This is a time for experience, not experiments. And as I have been clear from the start, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country, and we will fight them. Because we know that in a crisis, you have to prepare for the worst, not hope for the best. You must build forward, not cut back. In a crisis, you need bold action, not tired ideology. And above all, in a crisis, we need to bring people together, not pull them apart. Le choix devant nous ne pourrait pas être plus clair. Face à cette crise, allons-nous nous soumettre aux volontés des Américains ou allons-nous nous tenir debout? Allons-nous couper dans ce dont nous avons besoin ou investir dans notre futur? I know how we can give each other far more than any Americans can take away. And I know how, as America retreats from the world, Canada can lead it. So this Monday, Canadians will choose who stands up for them as their Prime Minister. And I'm asking for your vote for positive reasons, regardless of which party you voted for in the past. I'm asking for your vote to stand up to Donald Trump, to build a united Canada, to build Canada strong. Thank you, merci, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And I'll start with the media delegation for questions. Toronto Star.
Alex Ballingo of the Toronto Star. You talk about making big polluters pay for the adoption of green technologies to make up for the lost emission cuts from getting rid of the consumer carbon price.
Yes.
But your platform makes it sound like that might be optional for companies. So can you explain to us how that's going to work?
Yeah.
Why you think that we should be doing this now when companies like this are struggling so much with the trade war and with the tariffs?
Well, so there's a couple of things. And we're in Algoma, so it's a great question because we have three aspects of our climate plan that are relevant here. One is there is an industrial carbon price, but the question is what happens with the proceeds from that carbon price and to what extent is it reinvested in the industry? And we're literally about to see the reality of that as the electric arc line comes on and the 70% reduction in carbon that comes from that through SIF investments, partnerships, Canada Infrastructure partnerships with the province of Ontario, and of course the drive of the workers and innovation here at Algoma. So that's an example. That's one example. The second example, which is something we've also committed to, Alex, which is as our businesses, as our big industry decarbonize, we don't want foreign steel coming here that's high carbon, right? From Asia, from America. So we will have a carbon border adjustment mechanism that prevents that from happening and puts them in a stronger position. So that's the second. And then the third aspect is we have this carbon market that's in place. And we have an opportunity so that the large polluters on the marginal reductions that they make, that they can pay for people's climate smart choices. It will end up being a more efficient market for them. The government will stand in the middle and make sure that people have clear incentives. And if we are elected, we will put this in place for home retrofits, for better heating systems, for EVs. And then in that way, the two markets come together. It's better for the country. It's much more efficient, and it will lead to higher and faster reductions. A little closer, please.
Oh, sorry, just to be clear if I understand what you're saying, will that system impose a new cost on companies like this, and how will that work?
No, in fact, Alex, thank you for the clarifying. It will actually reduce their costs in the end because it'll give them more options on what they can do to reduce. Yeah.
Next question.
Okay. Plus près et plus loin.
Check, 1, 2.
Merci.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Pour revenir sur votre conversation que vous avez eue avec M. Trump le 28 mars, vous vous êtes défendu hier, M. Carney, de manquer de transparence. Alors, lorsque M. Trump a parlé du 51e État, puis vous dire aux Canadiens qu'est-ce qu'il vous a dit précisément.
Well, tout d'abord, ce qui est important avec une appel, n'importe quel appel, n'importe quelle discussion avec un chef d'État comme M. Trump, c'est les résultats de la conversation. Oui, non, c'est pas correct d'avoir une conversation et dire tous les détails de la conversation, selon moi. C'est ce qui est important et les résultats. Et les résultats, c'était du respect pour le Canada comme un pays souverain. Deuxièmement, un accord d'avoir des négociations globales en ce qui concerne nos relations économiques et sécuritaires, des négociations qui vont commencer juste après lundi, l'élection. Et puis, je lui ai avisé que nous ferons, à ce moment-là, nous ferons des contre-tarifs en ce qui concerne le secteur automobile. Dans ce contexte, ce qui est important, et qui va être le Premier ministre après cette élection, qui pourrait se tenir debout de lui, qui pourrait bâtir un Canada fort. In English, look, to the context, what's most important in a discussion, a meeting, is the conclusions of the meeting. The conclusions of this discussion with the President were clear, that he respected Canada as a sovereign country, that we will meet as two sovereign nations, the Prime Minister and the President, after Monday's election, to have comprehensive discussions about the economic and security partnership. I advised him that we would be retaliating against any auto tariffs, which we did. And I also advised him, I didn't say this in French, but that I would be working hard to gain Canadians' trust. And that leads me to the final point that I said in French, that this election is crucial because Canadians are deciding on Monday, and the people of Sault Ste. Marie in Northern Ontario could be decisive in this, who is going to be Prime Minister, who will be facing the President in those negotiations, which will start in very short term, which will have huge ramifications for this industry, the steel industry that we're in, and Canadians across this country. I'm working hard to earn their trust. Thank you.
Question.
Good morning, Mr. Carney.
Good morning.
This is Pramit Mukherjee from Reuters. In 2022, the Liberal Party imposed the luxury tax, which impacted the sale of Bombardier jets and the aviation and the aerospace industry, and a lot of high-value production as well. Since you are trying to promote high-value production, Canadian manufacturing, steel, aluminium, is that something that the Liberal Party or you as a Prime Minister will look at revoking or removing?
It's an interesting question. I'm going to give you a straight answer. It's not something I've looked directly at. Where we have concentrated our efforts is where will we have the maximum impact? Maximum impact. So let me give you an example to that. Some of you sat through what maybe was the least interesting speech that I've given, and I know there's competition for that, but which was about defense procurement and the change to our defense procurement mechanism so we can be much faster and we can be much more Canadian in our defense procurement. Because we are literally going to be spending over $100 billion in defense procurement over the course of the next 5 years. And almost all of that money has been going south of the border. We want much more of it to go north of the border, including back up into Canadian steel. So you see the opportunities. But so where we've focused is where we can have a maximum impact. And the question you ask is, yes, right on the margin, but in the grand scheme of things is not, if I may say, that important. And so I haven't looked at it. We haven't looked at it yet. Thank you.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. Carney, Mélanie
Oui,
Marquis
bonjour.
de la presse. J'ai deux questions
OK.
pour le prix d'une. Si le lendemain du lundi de l'élection, vous vous retrouvez avec un gouvernement minoritaire, est-ce que vous accepteriez de faire une entente, de sceller une entente avec le Bloc québécois? Puis sur la question plus large de l'indépendance au Québec, il y a le chef du Parti québécois, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, qui voudrait faire un référendum sur l'indépendance dans un premier mandat. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de l'idée de tenir un référendum dans le contexte canado-américain qu'on connaît?
Alors, à ce moment-ci, je travaille fort pour chaque vote des Canadiens et des Canadiens. Je veux gagner des votes et d'avoir un mandat fort et clair en ce qui concerne les négociations par rapport aux Américaines et puis notre stratégie économique globale afin de bâtir une économie forte. C'est difficile de faire de spéculation sur les événements au Québec, des politiques au Québec pendant les prochaines années. Je vais défendre la culture québécoise, la langue française, la gestion de l'offre et plus que ça, mon gouvernement, si nous sommes élus, si nous allons gagner l'élection, mon gouvernement va de plus que protéger, mais de renforcer et de promouvoir la société québécoise et l'économie québécoise.
Mais juste, si je peux me permettre, je veux dire, sur le principe de l'indépendance, vous avez navigué à travers le Brexit, vous avez vu aussi qu'il y avait des intentions en Écosse de séparer. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de ce projet-là?
Ce projet de loi n'existe pas à ce moment. Je sais, mais c'est une spéculation. Non. On a une situation maintenant, une crise très sévère maintenant. Il faut régler cette crise maintenant. Ça, c'est l'enjeu pour cette élection, selon moi. Merci.
Next question.
Good morning. Bill
morning.
Curry from the Globe and Mail. On the issue of ethics and transparency, Canada's ethics laws have been widely criticized as inadequate, particularly as a check on the Prime Minister's office and his powers. On access to information, the system is bogged down, excessive redactions. It's viewed as not working. Yet your platform is essentially silent on those two issues. So what commitments are you prepared to make to improve Canada's ethics regime and access to information system?
I think, Bill, you asked an important question. Yes, it's not in the platform. It's in my head. And so I will now, against the advice of my advisors, let it out of my head, which is I do think looking at access to information is quite important. The speed with which the information is provided, and as you say, the redactions that I think, I'm happy to commit to having a review of that because I do find that, at least as an outsider, I've been an outsider until now, and as a consumer of it, that I sometimes can't always follow the process, if you will. So an objective review of that would serve Canadians well, regardless of the result of the election. Thank you.
Ethics?
Look, I think there have been a number of reinforcements over the course of the last decade on the ethics side. I think that I would distinguish between the rules and the conduct. If there are specific proposals, obviously we would look at them. But what's important is bringing that spirit of obviously the highest integrity. I think my track record is consistent with that, but also that commitment that goes with it to transparency, which was the second part of your question. Thank you.
Next question.
Glenn McGregor, City News. Also not on your platform was electoral reform.
Yeah.
Your predecessor, Justin Trudeau, when he was first elected, promised to end the first-past-the-post system, have a more representative system.
Yeah.
Will you make the same commitment if you were elected Prime Minister? Will you revisit changing the current electoral system?
I think we didn't have it in our platform. Government's about making priorities, and given the scale of the economic crisis that we're facing, the security crisis we're facing, our commitment to supporting Canadians through a range of social programs and recommitting there, that candidly is not. Yes, it is not in the platform. I will give you my personal view on it, which is that I think as a prime minister should be neutral on these issues, so that if a process is developed, that they are objective and not being seen to tip the scales in one direction or another. And I think that, if I may, looking back on what happened previously, that probably is part of what stalled progress on it. So there may be a point, Glenn, where we've advanced on other immediate pressing priorities, particularly the crisis. That's our intention, that those more structural issues in our democracy could be addressed. Thank you. En français, en ce qui concerne ça, c'est assez court. Oui, on doit choisir comme gouvernement. Il faut faire des priorités. Maintenant, les grandes priorités, c'est de régler la crise, puis de bâtir notre économie et de renforcer la sécurité du Canada. C'est le premier point. Deuxièmement, selon moi, ça vaut mieux que le Premier ministre, n'importe quel Premier ministre, est neutre en ce qui concerne les améliorations potentielles de notre système démocratique. Après avoir réglé la crise, peut-être on va commencer avec ça. Je suis ouvert à ces questions, mais selon moi, ce n'est pas le moment d'engager dans ce processus. Okay?
Last question from the media.
Bonjour, M. Carney, Centre Vieira du Devoir. Pour revenir sur les propos d'annexion de M. Trump, votre réponse est toujours de dire « ça n'arrivera jamais, nous ne serons jamais un État américain
Ouais. ».
M. Trudeau le disait aussi avant vous, mais clairement, ça ne semble pas faire effet. Monsieur Trump continue quand même. Donc, on ne dirait pas que ça fonctionne. Et si je peux juste terminer ma question, c'est bien beau de dire on ne peut pas changer le président, mais clairement, il y aura peut-être un changement de stratégie à faire à ce niveau-là. Donc, est-ce que vous comptez durcir le ton avec M. Trump? Qu'est-ce que vous allez faire la prochaine fois qu'il va vous en parler?
La même chose, il dit non, jamais, jamais, jamais. Il a, comme individu, Monsieur le Président, il y a des idées fixes. Okay? Il y a des idées fixes. C'est un exemple. Hein? Et il faut le reconnaître et il faut agir comme ça. Il faut être absolument clair avec lui. Par exemple, il y a quelques semaines, M. Blanchet, il dit « c'est une blague ». C'est une blague. Jamais. Ce n'est pas une blague. C'est une volonté. C'est une volonté du président des États-Unis. C'est une des raisons pour lesquelles cette crise est aussi grave. Alors, il faut avoir une stratégie. Et le commencement d'une stratégie, c'est de bâtir une économie forte. Parce qu'il donne de respect à des économies qui sont fortes. C'est ça. Merci.
We'll now take 2 questions from local media.
Greg McGrath, Gaudy, Sioux today. As you mentioned during your remarks, Algoma Steel is working to bring the electric arc furnace online in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there's a looming trade war with the United States and the industrial carbon tax in place. Wondering if in your plans to support Canadian industries, you would consider exempting companies from the industrial carbon tax, particularly like ones like Algoma Steel, which are actively working towards having greener technologies in place in the near future.
So what's happening is that there's a couple of things here. One is that there's a value to that industrial carbon tax and the predictability of that tax and the certainty around. It encourages the types of investments that help companies such as Algoma leapfrog their competitors, and leapfrog in many cases they're American competitors, but international competitors. And Algoma is on the cusp of realizing the benefits of these investments. As the EAF comes online, they have low carbon production, and we're going to reinforce those benefits, including with our trade strategy, to make sure that's the case as well. We will continue, and I here with Terry and making this this commitment, which we've said publicly, but just to physically demonstrate it, if you will, which is to take all the revenues from our tariffs, and we have counter tariffs on steel and aluminum against $30 billion, and reinvest them in the workers and the companies that are most affected. And that will include in continuing to improve the competitiveness of these companies. Thank you.
Last question.
Morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Corey Nordstrom, CTV News, Northern Ontario. You have said every dollar collected from Canada's reciprocal tariffs will go to protecting Canada's workers and the businesses most affected by the crisis. How will you determine which businesses are impacted, especially for the many businesses that simply rely upon spending from workers like those in Algoma?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So what we're looking at is, as you can appreciate, so we're in ground zero in many respects of businesses and workers affected by the tariffs. Then you move out along the supply chain. Then ultimately, as you say, you move, or I think you imply, you move to the general economy, the spending at retail or travel or stores or clothes or whatever. It's principally going to go to those industries at the core and one or two steps removed along the supply chain. But then the advantage of that is you get the, to talk like an economist for a second, the multiplier effect of that support that goes there. What we won't do is pocket the money. And if you look at the Conservative platform, they take the $20 billion of tariff revenue, doesn't go to the workers, doesn't go to the companies, it goes in to the pockets for a tax cut that shows up in 5 years. That's not leadership. That's not going to build Canada strong. We have a totally different approach. Thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you. This is what concludes today's press conference.
Great. Thank you, sir.